There exists a fissure in time, a silent, synaptic gap between stimulus and response. It is in this fissure that character is not revealed, but forged. It is the moment an accusation lands, a question is posed not in curiosity but in challenge, a look is given that questions your very right to occupy space. In this moment, the architecture of the human psyche is laid bare. The untrained mind, the reactive soul, operates on a pre-installed script written by a world that demands explanation. This script dictates a response born from a deep, biological need for tribal acceptance. The script says, defend. Clarify. Justify. The words may vary, it was a misunderstanding, you're twisting my words, would never, but the melody is always the same, a plea. A plea for the accuser to rescind their judgment, for the audience to grant absolution. It is the sound of someone handing over the keys to their own validation. This response feels noble. It feels fair. It feels civilized. But to the strategic mind, the mind that understands power not as force, but as perception, this moment of defense is the precise instant of surrender. You have, in the blink of an eye, accepted a fundamental premise, that your accuser is the judge and you are the defendant. You have legitimized their courtroom. The content of your defense is irrelevant, the act itself is an admission of weakness. You have communicated to everyone watching that your sense of self is contingent upon their understanding. In the economy of power, you have just declared yourself bankrupt. This is the core, brutal insight of a Machiavellian worldview: power is not taken, it is surrendered. And the most common instrument of surrender is self-defense. Why does defense fail so catastrophically? It operates on the flawed assumption that people are rational arbiters of truth. They are not. They are emotional consumers of narrative. When you defend yourself, you are not arguing facts. You are arguing against a story they have already begun to tell themselves. You are trying to use logic to dismantle an emotional construct. It is like trying to use a scalpel to cut through smoke. Furthermore, defense is a positional failure. By engaging, you have accepted their framing of reality. You are playing their game, on their field, with their rules. You are saying, implicitly, your assessment of this situation is valid enough for me to spend my energy contesting it. This immediately cedes the high ground. Even if you win the point, you have lost the war for perceptual dominance. You look guilty not because of the facts, but because of the frantic energy of explanation. Calmness is perceived as truth, agitation is perceived as guilt. The need to explain is itself a form of agitation. The deep-seated urge to defend stems from a place of emotional fragility, the fear of being misunderstood, disliked, or exiled. It is the child's cry for the parent to see their innocence. Strategy, however, requires transcending this need. It requires a shift in objective, from seeking understanding to commanding control. Understanding is for intimacy, control is for power. The powerful do not crave to be understood, they are content to be perceived on their own terms. They understand that a reputation is not a fragile piece of glass to be protected, but a tool to be wielded. A strong reputation is not about being seen as good, it is about being seen as formidable. It is the difference between being liked and being unchallengeable. The ultimate asset in this game is mystery. Mystery is the space between what people know about you and what they suspect. It is the dark matter of reputation. The moment you explain yourself, you collapse this mystery. You become known, quantified, predictable. You become manageable. But when you remain silent, you force others to populate that void with their own assumptions. And the human mind, when faced with ambiguity, almost always defaults to overestimation. It assumes the worst, or the best, but most importantly, it assumes power. Your silence becomes a canvas onto which they project their own fears and insecurities. They don't see you, they see a reflection of what they believe you to be, and that is infinitely more powerful. Therefore, the strategic response to an attack is not to counter it, but to shatter the frame in which the attack was possible. This is achieved not through argument, but through psychological jujitsu. The goal is to turn the accusation into a mirror, forcing the accuser to see their own reflection in the glass of their own words. This operates on several levels. The social level: people are not watching the accusation, they are watching the reaction. Your calm, silent stillness in the face of chaos becomes the most compelling narrative in the room. It raises questions not about you, but about the accuser. Why is he so calm? Is he right? Is the accuser unhinged? You flip the audience's scrutiny onto them. The psychological level: the accuser is primed for a fight. They have rehearsed the confrontation. Your silence is a response they have not prepared for. It denies them the emotional payoff of conflict. This creates a psychological vacuum, into which they often spiral with doubt, anxiety, and further unforced errors. They begin to question their own position, their own memory, their own sanity. You make them wrestle with themselves. The philosophical level: you make a statement about your own position in the hierarchy. Silence is the language of the unassailable. By not engaging, you communicate that the accuser exists on a different, lower plane of concern. You are the mountain, and their words are the wind. You need not argue with the wind, you simply endure it, and in enduring, prove your immovability. The arsenal of the unassailable: practical application. This is not a philosophy of passive weakness. It is a philosophy of active, disciplined restraint. Your toolkit contains weapons far more potent than explanation. 1. Total silence, the default, and often most powerful, option. Not a nervous silence, but a comfortable, heavy, observant silence. You look at the accuser not with anger, but with the curious detachment of a scientist observing a specimen. This silence is not empty, it is full of unspoken judgment. It makes the accuser's words echo in the void, allowing everyone to hear their own foolishness. 2. The inquisitive pivot: instead of defending, you question the premise with genuine, calm curiosity. What an interesting thing to say. What makes you see it that way? It's fascinating, that's your interpretation. This forces them to justify their own position, often clumsily, putting them on the defensive without you having to make a single defensive claim. 3. The reframing statement. This is a short, sharp linguistic tool that severs the accusation from its emotional intent and recontextualizes it as a weakness of the accuser. It is not a denial, it is a reclassification. Accusation: you're so arrogant. Reframe: confidence often unsettles the insecure. Accusation: you're being manipulative. Reframe: it's interesting you'd perceive strategy as manipulation. Accusation: you don't care about anyone but yourself. Reframe: my focus seems to bother you. These are not answers. They are verdicts. They end the conversation by placing the label back on the one who tried to use it. 4. Strategic disappearance: the void, the ultimate escalation of silence. You do not just remain quiet in the moment, you completely remove your presence, physically or digitally. You do not block, which is a reaction, you simply vanish. This communicates the ultimate insult: you are not even worthy of my silence. You are beneath my energy. This forces the accuser to scream into a void, and with each scream, they reveal their own desperation to an audience that is now watching only them. The alchemy of perception: from defense to aura. The final stage of this practice is not a tactic, but a transformation. It is the move from consciously wielding silence to embodying unbotheredness. It is the development of an aura. This aura is a perceptual force field. It is built stone by stone through consistent, disciplined non-reaction. Over time, people stop seeing you as someone who chooses not to defend himself, and start seeing you as someone who has no need to. The accusations simply stop landing. They evaporate before they land, because your perceived identity is one of such immutable self-assurance that attacks seem absurd, comical, or pathetic by default. This is the Machiavellian endgame: to make your very existence a defense. When you achieve this, you break the cycle of attack and defense entirely. You operate in a state of definition, not defense. You are not resisting their narrative, you are imposing your own through sheer gravitational pull. The room shifts. The crowd grows quiet. Your name carries weight not because you fought for it in the mud, but because you built a throne on higher ground and never once looked down to see if others approved. You have become the one thing they cannot control, a man who answers to no one, because his validation is sourced from within. And in a world of desperate explainers, that is the most terrifying and powerful thing imaginable. This state of being, this aura, is not a destination one arrives at, but a climate one creates and maintains. It is the perpetual winter of your own making, where the hot air of accusation simply freezes and falls harmlessly to the ground. To continue is to dissect the very fabric of this reality, to understand the metabolic processes that transform the poison of external judgment into the fuel of internal sovereignty. The common man lives in a state of perpetual negotiation with the world. He is in a constant, silent auction, bidding for approval, for acceptance, for a favorable consensus on his character. Every defense is another bid placed, a desperate raise to meet the world's bet. The man who has mastered the Machiavellian principle has left the auction house entirely. He is not a bidder, he is the architect of the city in which the auction is held. His approval is not for sale because he is the currency itself. This transcendence is rooted in a fundamental reordering of one's psychological architecture. It requires the demolition of the external validation loop, and the construction of an internal citadel. Within this citadel, the opinions of others are not tenants, they are distant noises from a town you no longer visit. The sound may carry on the wind, but it does not dictate the decor, the mood, or the laws within your walls. How does one build this? It begins with the mortification of the ego. Not the destruction of self, but the taming of its desperate need for mirroring. The ego wants to be seen, to be agreed with, to be vindicated. It is the part of you that flinches. The practice of silence is the daily discipline of starving this impulse. Each time you choose not to correct, not to explain, not to justify, you are not being passive. You are actively performing a ritual of strength. You are telling your own ego, be still. Your worth is not out there. It is in here, and it is not up for debate. This is why the Machiavellian operator appears so cold. It is not a lack of emotion, but a supreme channeling of it. All the energy that the common man expends outward in defense, the anxiety, the fear, the anger, is instead redirected inward by the operator and converted into resolve. It becomes a nuclear reactor of self-certainty. The emotional turbulence is contained, harnessed, and used to power the unwavering light of his presence. This is the source of the stillness that so unnerves others. It is not the absence of energy, but the presence of an immense, controlled, and focused energy. Let us be surgical. This is not a philosophy for every interaction. It is a weapon for the conflict that seeks to diminish you. It is the response to the challenge, not the conversation. This distinction is critical. To remain silent in the face of a genuine friend's concern is not power, it is pathology. The master strategist knows the difference between an attack and an inquiry. He engages with curiosity and warmth when the context is safe and constructive. This very ability to choose, to be open when he wishes and closed when he must, is the ultimate expression of control. His warmth, when offered, is therefore more valuable because it is known to be a choice, not a default. The power of this stance compounds over time. It creates a legend. Your history of non-reaction becomes a part of your story. People will recount, I saw them accuse him of X, and he just smiled. He didn't even flinch. These stories become the pillars of your reputation. They create a preemptive defense. People learn that attacking you is a fruitless and, worse for them, a socially costly endeavor. They will not get the drama they crave. They will only succeed in making themselves look unstable against the granite of your composure. Thus, you are attacked less not because people think better of you, but because they know the attempt is futile and self-destructive. In the digital age, this principle is more potent than ever. The online world is a carnival of reactive energy. It is designed to provoke explanation, to bait defense, to create cycles of outrage and justification. To step into this arena and refuse to play is to become a black hole in the middle of the carnival. You absorb the energy and return nothing. No statement. No clap back. No setting the record straight. Your silent, unmoving profile becomes a monument to your restraint. Meanwhile, your accuser, left screaming into the void, is illuminated by the garish lights of their own neediness for all to see. You win by making the stage theirs alone, and the performance a tragedy of their own making. Ultimately, this is a philosophy of profound self-ownership. It is the decision that you, and you alone, are the author of your meaning. Your past actions are not open for reinterpretation by committee. Your intentions are not subject to a popular vote. Your character is not a wiki page to be edited by the masses. It is a closed text, written by you, and its meaning is fixed. The man who never defends himself has made a covenant with himself: I will be misunderstood before I will be explained. He accepts that to be great, to be singular, to be powerful, is to be a subject of discussion, not understanding. He trades the cheap currency of being liked for the vast wealth of being unfathomable. And in the end, that is the final, unassailable truth. The world does not follow those who are right. It follows those who are certain. Certainty is not proclaimed through explanation, it is demonstrated through silence. It is the quiet confidence of the sun, which does not explain its rise each morning. It simply rises, and the world adjusts itself to its light. Your silence is your sunrise. Let them adjust. The transition from practitioner to master is marked by a subtle but profound shift, the move from employing silence to embodying sovereignty. This is the final stage of the alchemical process, where the lead of external validation is transmuted into the gold of unassailable self-possession. It is no longer a tactic, but a state of being, a gravity that bends the social fabric around you without a single word of exertion. This sovereignty manifests as a radical and unsettling form of emotional independence. The master does not merely ignore attacks, he is genuinely unmoved by them. The common man's sense of self is a sculpture of ice, constantly melting under the heat of external opinion, requiring endless repair and defense. The master's sense of self is a mountain, ancient, immutable, defined by its own internal geology. The wind and rain may weather its surface, but they do not alter its essential nature. An insult is not a chisel blow, it is merely weather. It happens, and then it passes, leaving no meaningful trace. This creates a terrifying paradox for the accuser. The goal of any attack is to elicit a response, to see the flinch, to hear the crack in the voice, to know the barb found its mark. When faced with genuine, deep-rooted indifference, the attacker is not just denied this satisfaction, they are confronted with the void. Their power, which was entirely dependent on the victim's reaction, evaporates. They are left holding a weapon that has been rendered meaningless, and in that moment, they are not just defeated, they are erased as a threat. The master, by his very nature, cancels their capacity to harm. This level of mastery requires a philosophical framework that transcends strategy. It is built on a bedrock of non-attachment. This is not apathy, but a profound understanding that your worth, your identity, and your reality are not contingent upon the perceptions, approvals, or accusations of any other human being. You become the sole arbiter of your truth. An accusation is then seen for what it truly is, not a statement about you, but a statement about the accuser. It is a data point about their fears, their insecurities, their worldview. You do not rebut data, you observe it, you file it away, and you adjust your understanding of the landscape accordingly. This is how the master inverts the gaze. Every attack becomes an opportunity for intelligence gathering. When someone calls you arrogant, the unskilled person hears an insult to be refuted. The master hears a confession, I am insecure and your confidence threatens me. When someone calls you manipulative, the master hears, I feel a loss of control around you and I resent it. The content of the accusation becomes irrelevant, the subtext is everything. The master is no longer a participant in the conflict, he is an anthropologist studying the tribal rituals of a lesser culture. This detached observation is the source of the infamous smirk, the expression that so infuriates the accuser. It is not a sign of amusement at the insult, but of amusement at the transparent, predictable, and futile nature of the attack itself. It is the look of a chess grandmaster watching a novice attempt a basic, well-known gambit. The smirk says, "I see your move. I knew you would make it." And it changes nothing. The practical application of this sovereignty evolves from mere verbal restraint to a holistic command of presence. The economy of words, the master speaks not to explain the past, but to shape the future. Every word is a deliberate action, a stone placed carefully in the stream to change its flow. When he speaks after an attack, it is never about the attack. It is to change the subject to a matter of his own choosing, demonstrating that the previous topic was so insignificant it did not even warrant acknowledgement. As I was saying, the quarterly projections. The language of the body, the flinch is eradicated. The posture is permanently relaxed, yet radiating latent power. The eyes do not dart away in search of validation, they hold a calm, slightly bored gaze that takes in everything and admits to nothing. This physical poetry communicates more than 1,000 defenses ever could. The control of tempo, the master dictates the rhythm of all interaction. He is never rushed into a response. He allows pauses to linger to the point of discomfort, not for dramatic effect, but because he is genuinely unconcerned with filling the silence. This controlled tempo exhausts and disorients the emotionally reactive, who thrive on rapid-fire exchange. The ultimate power, however, lies in the ability to inspire self-policing. When your aura of unbothered sovereignty becomes your legend, people begin to pre-censor themselves. Before launching an attack, a moment of doubt flashes in their mind: what if he doesn't react? What if I just look foolish? What if that smirk appears? This moment of hesitation is where their attack dies before it is ever born. You have, without lifting a finger, installed your own defense system in the minds of your potential adversaries. This is the culmination of the Machiavellian path, to become a passive catalyst for the self-destruction of folly. You do not defeat your enemies. You provide the empty room in which their own echoes deafen them. You become the still pond that reflects their own ugliness back at them, forcing them to either confront it or flee from it. You cease to be a player in their game and become the silent, unmoved referee who owns the field on which all games are played. Your power is no longer something you do, it is something you are. And in that being, you achieve the only true form of victory, the freedom to exist, utterly and completely, on your own terms. The world no longer tells you who you are. You tell the world what is.